Dear students, welcome to the MOOC on India's foreign policy in a globalizing world. In this lesson, we are going to learn about India-US relations after the Cold War. Main objectives of this lesson is to understand relations between India and the United States in the post-Cold War era, to know various factors that determine the relations between the India and the US during post-Cold War period, to understand how the US realized the importance of India. We begin with the first part of the lesson, in which we will discuss about political relations between India and US in the post-Cold War era. The bilateral relations between India and the US had been influenced by Pakistan and China's relations with the latter. The Indo-US relations was affected by the dynamics of US ties with India's neighbors. The end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, accompanied by India's economic reforms, initiated a process of gradual shift in the way the two countries perceived each other. Relations between the two countries have evolved into what has been termed as a policy of comprehensive engagement. After the end of the Cold War, Indo-US relations in the first half of 1990s have been described as one of the missed opportunities and contradictory policies. This could be attributed to a slow acknowledgement of the changed international order, both at the political and bureaucratic levels. India and the US continue to have differences on various issues, including the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. India's nuclear test in 1998 led to international sanctions against India. These tests were seen as a challenge to the global non-proliferation regime. Another action that caused friction between India and the US was the passage through Congress of the Brown Amendment in November 1995, which allowed the US to supply Pakistan with military equipment worth of $658 million and included maritime reconnaissance aircraft and missiles. President Clinton supported this move on the ground that Pakistan has already paid for the equipment but refused to release the 26 F-16s. The situation was further complicated when it was revealed that China had supplied M11 missiles to Pakistan, and the US did not apply sanctions on China for violating the missile technology control regime. On the other hand, there was a degree of India-US military cooperation. In 1991, the US Air Force General Claude Kickleiter visited India and proposed extensive training and exchanges between the two militaries. The government's view of these exchanges was articulated by Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, who noted how the professional relations had achieved much more than politicians had been able to do in decades. In the 1990s, especially after India's declared policy of economic liberalization, it came to be viewed as an attractive market for US business. Despite the lack of an overall policy framework, security cooperation also increased during this period. During the Gulf War, the Indian government granted refueling rights to US military aircraft en route from the Pacific to the Middle East. In 1996 and 1997, the Indian and the United States navies held joint exercises in the Indian Ocean. A defense policy group was established in the mid-1990s. Its activities included high-level exchanges, periodic policy reviews, and reciprocal visits by senior commanders. Political relations between India and United States. The frequency of high-level visits and exchanges between India and the US has gone up significantly as of late. Prime Minister Modi visited the United States on 26th to 30th September 2014. He held meetings with President Obama, members of the US Congress and political leaders, and also interacted with members of Obama's cabinet. He also reached out to the captains of the United States Commerce and Industry, the American civil society, and think tanks, and the Indian American community. A vision statement and a joint statement were issued during the visit. The visit was followed by President Obama's visit to India on 25th to 27th January 2015 as the chief guest at India's Republic Day. During the visit, the two sides issued a Delhi Declaration of Friendship and adopted a joint strategic vision for the Asia-Pacific and the Indian Ocean region. Prime Minister Modi again visited the United States on 23rd to 28th September 2015, during which he held a bilateral meeting with President Obama and interacted with the leaders of business, media, academia, provincial leaders and the Indian community. Prime Minister visited the United States for the multilateral nuclear security summit hosted by President Obama in Washington, D.C. from 31st March to 1st April 2016. This was soon followed by an official visit by Prime Minister on 6th to 8th June, during which he held bilateral discussions with President Obama and also addressed a joint session of the United States Congress. Prime Minister Modi was the sixth Indian Prime Minister to address the US Congress. There is a frequent interaction between the leadership of the two countries, including telephone calls and meetings on the sidelines of international summits. A hotline has been established between the Prime Minister's office and the White House. The series of visits by Prime Minister Modi and the President Obama in 2014 and 2015 demonstrated the intent to elevate the India-US relationship to a strategic partnership. US paradigm shift towards Kashmir issue. After the Cold War, the US underwent a major shift in its Kashmir policy. During the Kargil War, the US for the first time supported India and persuaded Pakistan to withdraw its forces from Kargil. It also supported the status quo in Kashmir and did not favor a plebiscite. It asked Pakistan to restrain itself from getting involved in Kashmir. One can observe that there was a shift in the US policy towards Kashmir after the Kargil episode. The US did not incline to mediate in the Kashmir dispute and encouraged India and Pakistan to engage in bilateral dialogue to find a peaceful solution. This approach reflected a recognition of the principle of bilateralism in resolving disputes. One of the main reasons for such a shift was the American fear of the Kashmir issue flaring up into an India-Pakistan nuclear clash and the concern over the growing militancy in the region. The shift in US policy towards Kashmir was part of a larger shift in India-US relations, which transitioned from a Cold War era distance to a closer strategic partnership. The two countries started working together on a variety of areas, including defense, trade, energy, and technology. I hope you understood about political relations between India and the United States in the post-Cold War era. In the next video, we will discuss about the India-US dialogue architecture, strategic consultations, defense, trade, economic and energy cooperation. Thank you.